Hello, my name's Hannah Hodgson, and for the month of June, I am the blogger in residence at the Poetry Business. I'm going to be reading you some poems from my most recent pamphlet, um, Where I'd Watch Plastic Trees Not Grow. And later next year, I will be having a pamphlet with the Poetry Business. So if you like what you read or hear, I hope that you'll consider looking out for my future collection. I'm a poet living with a life-limiting illness, which means that I use a hospice and have multi-organ involvement within my disease. I have loads of different diagnoses, but I do have one overarching diagnosis, which means that my life expectancy is shortened. And I write a lot about this. And the first poem is The Orchard. The trees here grow medical conditions. I'm second from the left, and each fruit is a crystallized diagnosis. They're quite remarkable, have a snap like pea pods and a taste you can't really ground. I'm biblical in that once you pick a fruit, regret isn't enough to make it reattach. Feel free to have a look around. I'd walk quickly though. You don't want to be around here when they land. The next poem comes to you from my 6-month hospital stay about 5 years ago now. I went from being very previously healthy, having a few very, very minor chronic things going on in the background, to spending 6 months of my life inside a hospital and having tubes down my throat and so many new experiences that I didn't recognize the person I became because it was so different to when I went in. Isolation ward. The air was supposed to be filtered, but I knew it was Tuesday by the smell of chips wafting through the vents into my hospital room. The windows held 2 atmospheres set centimeters apart, protected me like wary parents from the uncontrollable. They didn't open, contained me indoors as if a monkey, almost human. They were supposed to be airtight, but once a spider broke in, found a glitch in the medical world, squeezed under the silicone. A nurse squashed him with a library book before I could stop her, before I could marvel at something I hadn't seen for 6 months. The doctors were supposed to diagnose, to know for certain, but I found my diagnosis on Google, knew the answer long before the arrival of my test results. Since that time, I have had many, many, many hospitalizations, and that has meant a loss of personhood in some senses. Certainly, when you begin to feel like a number, the NHS number that they use to identify every single person they treat is 10 numbers long, and I know mine off by heart because just like a phone number you say all the time, I have to identify myself to medical professionals in a very quick way. And as opposed to giving my name, date of birth, address, they can just type this number in and it unlocks my medical history for them. So this sprung from people feeling like they needed to protect me and not tell me things that were going on for them while I was in hospital, or even once I was out, people felt like really minor everyday things. I wouldn't want to talk about them, but actually, when you're seriously ill, that is something you cling to. Dear visitors, I've become a tiger, and this ward is a zoo. Pay your entrance fees at the nurses' station and gulp as you arrive at my cubicle. Showtimes are twice daily for an hour. Things don't end well for those who linger. Don't maudle. As the captive here, that's my job. Ask and answer questions, reveal a little of your flesh. Trust I won't rip you apart. Talk of the wild, talk of home. Meet me at midnight with the bolt cutters. As I mentioned at the start, my condition is life limiting and I have had use intermittently of a hospice. And for someone that's 23, I have been around a lot of dying people and know the sounds and how that looks actually in person. And my writing has been a way to turn something so brutal into an art and also talk about themes I've noticed. Death rattle. Back in the day, everyone loved a good hanging. Curiosity gathered in the town square, red-nosed, waiting for the theatre of mortality to end. Today, I attract the equivalent crowd, have to untangle my vocal cords from intrusive questioning. Hospice is an experience with the brink. As near the cliff edge you can go without falling. Natural death isn't quick. It begins with a storm brewing in the chest, thunder of increasing intensity, crackles of lightning in the airway. It ends with a moment of clarity, final words like an April shower slowly evaporating. Something else I've noticed as an NHS user is that there is an obscene amount of leaflets for every single condition you can imagine within A&Es and clinics. Not so much since COVID happened, because obviously it requires touch, but I'd imagine they still give them to individual patients. They'll have a procedure for that surely, because they do contain important information, but also things that you don't expect. Leaflet dispensed by crows who circle around the resource bay like overstated authority figures. People with cardiac conditions often experience a sense of impending doom. It's the heart's call to the brain for martial law. Each cell is a police officer clad in riot gear, deployed to essential functions, the brain, lungs, and vascular system. Possible causes include a blackout, an arrhythmia, or panic attack. As the Prime Minister of your body, remain calm. Pretend everything will be fine, even though it won't. As I mentioned, my overarching diagnosis is degenerative. So as things start to go within me, I'm deaf. That's why I stutter sometimes and struggle. I'm trying to work out how that word sounds. But these things don't desert you all at the same time. They leave one by one, and it just sometimes it can feel like a continuous state of mourning, which is a very sad way to put it. But being left in stages is really hard. Little deaths. After the death of my stomach, the church was full of mourners. But at the 15th funeral of myself, it's just me and a few doctors. We lay wreaths by each ear and seal each urn with a hearing aid mould. I'm a widower grieving herself, my stem still living, while all the petals have died. The body has begun to droop. The second to last poem I'm going to read explains itself. The only person I knew with my condition is dead. Her mother posted the news on Facebook to over 1,000 comments. Platitudes that land like butterflies hardened mid-flight. Some hijack the tragedy, metamorphosize into water features, enjoy the act of sobbing with reason. The hospice adds her name to the roll call of the dead. Wooden hearts, which hang above the nurse's station in the opposite of the baby's mobile. I'd like to close on a poem that captures a phenomenon. I've never been able to say that word, even before I was deaf, that I've noticed since I've been ill. So I had this very nerdy, head down, bottom of the food chain experience of high school up until the age of 16, which is when I had 6 months in hospital and became ill. And suddenly the head teacher knew my name. It was a big school. It was like 1,600 kids. It was a change in experience, and a lot of people that gave me grief before I was ill just stopped. And I still get it today. People message me and are like, oh, I always thought you were amazing. And I just I think it's interesting how when someone's ill, or even after they die, people rewrite history within their heads to make them feel better about that, um, those things that they were involved in, even if they didn't contribute to the illness. Um, Everybody loves a dying girl after Tishani Doshi. Some girls avoid me in town, cross the road to avoid maudlin contagion, whilst others come over to chat, gather pieces of information they scrunch and throw onto the bonfire of prattle. At parties, I'm everyone's friend. I travel in their mouths, disgust, even though I'm not there. Gossip is always swirling in drinks as mixers. I wish to hear the truth, to hear what they say without their masks on, without their filters activated by my sitting feet away. I wish to reject my sainthood. Illness doesn't cure me of personality, of doing things which are unforgivable. Thanks so much for your time if you got to the end, and I hope you will be keeping an eye out for the other things that I've been doing this month.